This podcast does not provide medical advice. Please listen to the complete disclosure at the end of the recording.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Everyone Dies, the podcast where we talk about serious illness, dying, death, and bereavement. I'm Marianne Matzo, a nurse practitioner, and I use my experience from working as a nurse for 44 years to help answer your questions about what happens at the end of life.
And I'm Charlie Navarrete, actor and man about town in New York City, here to ask the questions that you may have while listening to our podcast. We are both here because, well, we have nowhere else to go. But not only that, also, forewarned is forearmed. And the more you know in advance, the better prepared you will be in a crisis, such as knowing what a loved one wants at the end of life because smart you discussed it ahead of time.
So please relax and get yourself something splendid to snack and sip on. Put your feet up, unbutton the top button of your jeans, and thank you for spending the next hour with Charlie and me as we talk about the last good day with a loved one. In the first half, Charlie has a ghost story for us, and holy mackerel-andy, he has a recipe of the week. You know, Charlie, you don't know this, but maybe you do. My dad's name was Andy, and every now and then he'd come out with a holy mackerel-andy. So I had to throw that in there with holy mackerel.
Okay, yes.
In the second half, I'm going to be talking about...
Sounds fishy. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
How we never know when the last good day is going to be. And in our third half, Charlie reads an essay by Spohn about his life's last good days. So, Charlie, what's new?
Pussycat. What's new, Pussycat?
Whoa!
Whoa. What's new, Pussycat?
You can't see this, but I'm throwing my underwear at the computer screen. Do you remember that when he would perform?
I do remember. I'm taking a pause. Yes, I do remember that. Wow, it's crazy.
I know. I wonder.
It's not unusual.
To be loved by anyone.
It's not unusual.
See, there's a reason why our audience is primarily older people, because the younger ones say, what in the world are these two talking about?
Don't get it. Because they're not cool like us, when cool was cool.
Or old like us either. So, you got a holy mackerel cake for us? What's this? What's this?
I wouldn't say old. I would say maybe aging.
You're old.
No. I'm aging. Listen, no. I think some people get old and other people just age. I would like to think that you and I are both simply aging.
Well,
not getting
I think
old.
Perhaps you have a negative what's the word I want? Connotation regarding getting old that I don't have. I'm a gerontologist, so I think getting old is like, it's a badge of survival. Not everybody gets to do it. So
That's
lucky
true.
us, we get to be old. I don't have any problem being old.
Yes.
In fact, I embrace it.
Well, it's better than the alternative.
Exactly.
Being dead.
Exactal Monday.
He's dead.
Yeah. So I'll take old any day. But
Very
back
good.
to the cake.
Mm-hmm.
What's this mackerel cake?
Well, our recipe this week is for holy cow cake.
Oh, it's a cow.
Which is,
mackerel.
Well, that's right, holy cow. We need more cowbell. Holy cow cake, which is chocolate cake topped with sweetened condensed milk and caramel sauce, which is then topped with whipped topping and chopped Butterfingers, hence the name Holy Cow. And speaking of holy cow, deep in the bowels of the morgue at the New York Times lies a story of a ghost from an article published on September 18th, 1870, titled True History of the 27th Street Goblin. Ta-ta-ta! And this is real. This was a big story in 1870. So sit back, relax, as Marianne says, grab your favorite beverage. I'm going to go grab mine. I'll be back in a few minutes, folks.
Since we're in
Just kidding.
we're
I'm
in
not leaving.
1870, I'm going to go put my corset on and buckle that bad boy up.
Me too. I'm going to go put my corset on as well. So, in 1860, reports of a ghost on 27th Street in Manhattan appeared. The secret history and details of this report were kept quiet until 1870. It's a long story shortened, and, quote, every word may be relied on implicitly. The narrative will reveal the mischief created by an unscrupulous reporter, a half-dozen shirking policemen, and 2 frightened women. The style of the text is from the original 1870 article. Let's dig in. In 1860, and still today, 27th Street was a desirable place for well-to-do people, not the rich and famous, but what we refer to as upper middle class. As it happened, several houses were put on the market for various reasons simultaneously. Then, by some unlucky combination of circumstances, they were all taken by disreputable persons and put to an infamous use. This troubled the remaining residents, who anxiously inquired for the means to drive out the pests. By chance, one resident met an unscrupulous reporter who had some experience in disreputable matters and, conveniently, had a quasi-connection with the press. He suggested the nuisance could be glimmered out by stationing a policeman at each door with a lantern in hand to flash its light in the face of every visitor. Figuring that customers would leave soon, followed by the owners of the now disreputable houses. The superintendent of police approved, and thus began Operation Lantern Post, giving a lively and picturesque tinge to a locality that had before been merely prosaic, though soon created results no one anticipated. The lanterns led to disaster. Visitors to an illicit house were suddenly confronted by a blinding glare of light. The officer would pull out a card, look at it, look at the subject, back and forth, finally pronouncing, "Excellent likeness," explaining the picture would be added to the rogues gallery, clarifying that the lantern was actually a camera made exclusively for police purposes. The visitors fled. But the superintendent had not imagined that the light, which widely advertised the disreputable, would inevitably reflect discredit upon adjoining properties, as all properties had policemen with lanterns. Weeks glided into months, and the lamps continued to bring greater notoriety. Houses of the honest neighbors greatly depreciated and continued to fall still more in value. Far from virtue buying out vice, it seemed probable that the opposite would happen. The reputable families had absorbed some of the infamy of the neighborhood, wives and daughters mistaken for what they were not. The aforementioned unscrupulous reporter saw the lowered prices as opportunity, but prices were not quite low enough. Toward the close of 1862, stories began to appear in a Sunday journal of a ghost which was said to haunt a house in East 27th Street. The address of the specter was not given. Speculation suggested the spirit did not fully trust the writer, or the ghost had stipulated to be spared the horrors of publicity. Detailed accounts continued to appear week after week, with utmost care to preserve the secret of its exact whereabouts. Manhattanites, unfamiliar with shyness, became aroused. The tremendous power of repetition of the clumsy stories set hundreds of people to walking through the selected street, to stare curiously at the houses on either side, and wonder which one had the honor of being haunted, unwittingly playing the game of the unscrupulous writer by swearing they had seen the ghost. The story morphed into the shape of a bloody head, floating near a high ceiling with the usual ghostly attribute of being everywhere all at once. The properties of reputable residents deteriorated to one-half their value. 2 houses closed and could not be rented at any price for months until an auctioneer was tempted by the low rent to undertake to live in the midst of the supernatural. His entrance into the house led to the final location of a ghost, which was to horrify Metropolis. Late in the afternoon, a van arrived with carpets, a lounge, and a few chairs. Two ladies of the family arrived to direct the placement of the carpets, leaving the other articles below stairs in the front basement. They went over the entire house, taking minute note of everything. They locked all the doors to return early the next morning to receive delivery of their remaining household effects. At the early arrival the next day, the main entrance was locked as they had left it. Going into the front basement and opening the blind, they gazed in blank astonishment. The lounge and chairs had been removed. They next went to the rear basement, which was the kitchen. Their breath almost stopped. There were the lounge and chairs in a semicircle around the range, the latter almost red hot. The lady certain there was not a single lump of coal on the premises. Yet the gas was burning at full head. They gazed around them but could not see no sign of violent entrance or exit. All windows and doors were locked as they had left them. It was evident that no human being had been in the house overnight, yet a heavy lounge and a number of chairs had been removed from one room to another. A great fire had been made out of nothing, and gas had been lighted in pipes that had no connection with the main. Finally, one said, "The ghost!" In the street, they saw a policeman and made him see the inside for himself. The policeman was silent as he could not fall back on ordinary explanations, compelled to admit the supernatural. At the lady's insistence, he called for a van to assist and put the furniture into it. The ladies dropped the keys at his feet and hurried away. The policeman attempted to drive away the throngs of the curious which had begun to gather around the house. He speedily found he had assumed an impossible task. The news that the ghostly house had been found spread with incredible rapidity, and thousands were thronging the streets, making it impossible for pedestrians or vehicles. This showed the astonishing prevalence of superstitions in a civilized center and how implicit was the belief, amounting to unquestioning faith, in the occupancy of a spirit in a deserted house. It was necessary to keep a platoon of police constantly on the ground to keep the throngs in order and preserve the haunted house from being destroyed. What remained was a haunt of gilded shame. The sight that greeted the ladies on the wintry morning that frightened them and set the whole town agape seemed inexplicable. Nobody attempted a solution to the mystery. Nobody seemed to greatly desire it. An explanation of the 27th Street ghost, which had been created for speculative purposes, is now, for the first time, to be given to the public. That 6 policemen with lamps remain at the entrances to the disreputable houses must now be remembered. A stationary post was the most irksome of all duties, especially after midnight, with streets deserted while their blood chilled from the cold. They sought an escape from their hardships, and they found it. The empty house had a sidewalk coal hole, the cover of which they found had been left unlocked, and a chute sufficiently large to admit easy entrance to the cellar. The policemen added larceny to trespassing by helping themselves to fuel from the street bin of a nearby grocer, thereby helping themselves to 3 essentials: shelter, fire, and light. They were careful to leave one of their number on guard outside to give warning of the approach of patrolling sergeants. They made themselves comfortable during the night, evading suspicion or detection. Comfort came from moving the furniture around the stove, which they lit. As morning progressed, one policeman heard a noise overhead in the hall. It was the 2 ladies from the day before. The police scurried out the way they came, undetected, leaving moved furniture and a hot stove in their wake. This is how the famous 27th Street ghost possessed the residence. None of the policemen dare say a word in explanation of the mystery, which is now, for the first time, revealed.
Wow, you solved the mystery, Charles.
No, I just read it. I didn't solve it, but yeah, this was not. And and the amazing thing, and when I said the thing about maybe the people, that ghost maybe didn't want the publicity or anything. Yeah, that's part of the article, and it's funny. This is over 150 years ago now. What's changed? I mean, the slightest rumor, and especially now, with the internet and social media and all that. I mean, this goes global,
right?
But it's the same now. 150 years later, you hear some little rumor, and people go nuts, and just cling on to not the negative, but the negative too, but just some. And I can't even think of the word, some amazing event, and just will not let go, and just cook up theories and yes. So there we are. So with that, please go to our webpage for the recipe for Holy Cow Cake and additional resources for this program. We have a small favor to ask. Thousands of you have placed your trust in Everyone Dies as a source of trusted information about serious illness, dying, death, and bereavement. We are asking for your support in the form of a tax-deductible contribution so that we can continue to offer you quality programming. Thank you in advance for going to our website to make your donation, as well as following us on Facebook and Instagram. Visit us at www.everyonedies.org. That's dies.org. Marianne?
Thanks, Charlie. Today I'm going to be talking about the last good day. And this is something that I've kind of thought about and carried with me, I want to say almost my whole life. I think I've always been aware of endings and the impermanence of life. And it's probably because my dad died right after my 15th birthday. And at that tender age, I became very aware of what a difference a day makes. My dad used to say that God gives us only so many days, and so we have no control over when we're going to die. He'd say, when God calls your number, you go. It may have been his way of rationalizing overeating, drinking beer, and smoking multiple packs of cigarettes a day, and disregarding any lifestyle modification suggested by his doctor and everyone who loved him. But I think his death started me on this road of feeling that every day was a gift, to make the most of each day and not to take life for granted, because I saw, in a matter of minutes, him dying. I've also lived life in sort of a state of anticipatory grieving. I look at what is happening in my life, and I'm usually enjoying it and mindful of it, but I always carry sort of an undercurrent of this will be over, or this is ending. For example, when I was in graduate school, I had a squad of 3 friends. And for those 2 years that I would study with, bake brownies, have parties, and share so many aspects of our life. But during our last semester, I started this anticipatory grieving, saying that this is the last time for this, or how much I would miss that. And they would roll their eyes at me and tell me, just enjoy the now. But I was enjoying the now, but feeling the loss of what was to come. By the time we went to graduation, I had my mind around the end of our college years together. I knew the date of the end of classes and graduation day. I was prepared for the loss of that time together. But what about situations that blindside us, that we don't see coming and we have no way to prepare for? The grief in this situation is very different. Think of this as the last good day. We have no way of knowing that that day that we're having with a loved one is the last time you're going to be experiencing it. At the time, it's just another decent day. For example, my daughter played volleyball from the time she was in, 3rd or 4th grade, all the way through high school. She played varsity as I don't know, sophomore, junior. She played club volleyball, and we traveled all around for her playing. I watched years of volleyball. And, she was she was going into her senior year of high school. When I watched her play as a junior, it's like, oh, there's a whole nother year of this. Well, come to find out, going into her senior year, she decided she wasn't going to play volleyball anymore. I said, what? You've been playing all this time? You're stopping now? This is your senior year. What are you doing? She's like, I'm done with it. And her coaches were like, just, you don't even have to try out. Just come play varsity with us. This is your senior year. And she's like, no, I don't want to. I'm just done. And I was just flabbergasted with her. And I said to her, I didn't know last year when I was watching you play volleyball that would be the last time I'd see you play volleyball. And she'd say, Mom, you're so dramatic. It's like, I'm not dramatic. I didn't know. I mean, I would have enjoyed it more if I had known this was your last game. But we don't ever know when we're not going to see our kid play volleyball again, or which time is the last time that you'll breastfeed your child because suddenly they decide they're done, or the last time that we kiss or make love to a partner before you find out about a betrayal or they die. The last good day doesn't have to be the last because of death. Anything can occur to make us say, oh my God, that's now gone. During COVID, we'd go to our favorite Mexican restaurant, and we'd gone one week, and the next week we went back, but it was closed down. It was like, I'm standing at the door saying, what? Where'd they go? Why didn't they tell me? Why didn't they warn me last week that they were closing? It was just like they closed the door, and that was it. The day gains power only when we look back at it, but where's the joy in that? We feel regret and grief when we look back and know the moment is gone and that it's never going to return. In her essay, The Last Good Day, Alyssa Bass writes about a vacation she took with her friends and the group photo they took on the beach. And she says, that photo reminds me that life can turn on a dime, that a healthy person can become a sick person in the blink of the eye, and that we are all so mortal. So I reach out to our social media followers and ask them about their last good day. Let me give you some of the things that they told me. One person wrote, I took my mom to the symphony who played the soundtrack for Singin' in the Rain. She was so happy and laughed all night long while listening to the music while watching the movie on the big screen. She was gone only a few months later. I'm so glad I got that chance to spend that time with her. But, you can hear, you can think that this woman's like thinking, oh, maybe next year they'll do, I don't know, The Sound of Music or something, and we'll go to that. But she can go to that, but she can't go with her mom. Another woman wrote, I had COVID and my friend came to me to bring me some groceries and visit with me for a short walk outside. I thanked her, and although I still felt sick, we had a good time. It was our last contact. She ended her own life in a hotel room 4 days later. Another person wrote, I attended a funeral for my great uncle on Thursday and saw and met with many relatives I've not seen in years. One of them was my great uncle's son-in-law, who is a prominent member of my dad's side of the family. We all attended a wake after my great uncle's funeral and socialized and caught up. I talked quite a bit with my great uncle's son-in-law that evening, and he was fine. 4 days later, my great uncle's son-in-law died suddenly, out of nowhere, no warning, total surprise. The family is reeling still from my great uncle's death, but now this, we never know when our last moments will be. 2 major family members gone in the same week. And I think that part of our saying every week, Charlie, every day is a gift, is to remember that every day is a gift, but also that in a blink of the eye, everything that we know or think or feel can be changed. And I have this like pervasive, like I said, since my dad died at 15, this feeling of, is this the last time I'll have this? Is this the last time we'll be able to do this? And to try to really hold that feeling, because even with my children, I tend to grieve their changes in their lives. Like when they were little babies, it was like, oh, I love them being little babies and cuddling them and breastfeeding them and taking care of them. And then they became toddlers and my babies were gone. And I don't know if it's written anywhere, but I've never heard or read about this grief of your children growing up, that, you're madly in love with this little baby. But then they're not babies anymore. They're these different people. They're toddlers. And it's like, yeah, I adore my toddler, but I miss my baby. And then, your toddler becomes, the next phase of life and the next phase of life. I honestly never really grieved when they stopped being teenagers, because that was a little difficult for two girls to be teenagers. But, it was like, at least in my head, it was like, okay, well, this too will pass and they'll get their hormones straightened out or whatever it is, and they'll be, nice people again. But each of those younger phases where you're like so madly in love with those little kids and they change and they're cool in their new next form. But I still really missed those different people they were along the way. And it can be with relationships, it can be with parents, it could be with pets. You knew our dog Dimple died over the summer, and I was saying to my husband, it's like, that last walk with Dimple, I didn't know that was our last walk with Dimple. Although, being who I am, every walk with Dimple, when at the very end, I'd be saying, I wonder if this is the last walk or the last, bag of little donuts that I'd buy, because she's not going to be here for them anymore. So I live in a very strange way. I realize that I'm very kind of hyper aware of that last good day. But I don't think everybody is. And I wanted to talk about that in terms of holding on to those moments or taking a pause in those moments to say, if this was the last time I could do this with this person, can I hold it? Can I be mindful of it? Last week or a couple weeks ago, we did a show about mindfulness, and that's a part of this. Capturing each day, holding it tight, and appreciating all the little occurrences are good ways to hold on to a good day. Do we have time for that? Do we want to make time for that? We can look at how we spend our days and be sure that we've hugged enough and laughed enough and appreciated each moment for it to be enough. And in the end, I guess all we can really hope was that it was good enough. Any thoughts, Charlie, or questions?
Yeah. I mean, to your point, what you said about you just never know, in a moment, everything can change. I mean, your world can suddenly change. And I mean, just in terms of mindfulness, either with a friend, with a loved one, even just sitting outside, having a burger and a bourbon, and just being in that moment, just mindful that, it's a warm summer night, people are walking by, The street lights are on. And that's all that matters, is just what's going on at that moment. Not worrying about bills or where the next gig will come from. No, just enjoying that moment. That. Yeah. It's always good.
So what do you have for our third half, Charles?
Well, an essay titled Your Last Good Day, written by Steve Spohn in 2016. 34 days ago, I lost the ability to drive my wheelchair, and with it, my independence. You see, my disease, SMA, spinal muscular atrophy, is deteriorating my muscles at a very slow pace. Over time, my abilities are being torn away due to the atrophy that sets in from not using groups of muscles. The same thing would happen to you if you were to stay in bed for months or years without moving. Astronauts experience some of what SMA does to the body after being in space for long periods of time, where you don't have to fight gravity to lift your body weight. Basically, if you don't use your muscles, you lose them. Keep that in mind the next time you decide to skip out on leg day at the gym. John Green captured the disturbing truth of living with a progressive disease in The Fault in Our Stars. The main protagonist, Hazel, riffs about life. There's no way of knowing that your last good day is your last good day. At the time, it's just another good day. Your last good day is a day like any other. The limitations in your life have stayed the same for some time. There's nothing different about that particular day until all of a sudden, like a dump truck crashing through your front door, everything changes in an instant. For someone with a progressive disease like mine, you get many, many last good days. My last good day of breathing, right before I was put on a ventilator, was when I was 9 years old. My last good day of driving a wheelchair with a standard joystick controller was right after high school. My last good day of using a computer keyboard was a decade ago. My last good day of driving with a tiny joystick using my thumb was a Friday in late February. The thing about this concept is that it's not limited to people with disabilities. In fact, like many subjects, the real difference is that they're amplified for me. But you've had your own set of last good days. Maybe you just haven't thought about it that way. Your last good days look entirely different than mine, and entirely different than everyone else's. Yours might be something like your last good day of seeing without glasses, walking without pain, lifting without discomfort, or eating a piece of chocolate cake without it going straight to your hips. Each of our lives are full of last good days. Truth is, you and I have an invisible clock above our heads. It began the second you were born, counting the number of days, hours, minutes, and seconds you still have on this earth. Even with a terminal illness, you don't think about the clock. You're busy living your life, the best life you can, and in the best way you know how. But every once in a while, life has a way of reminding you that the clock is still ticking. On that random Friday, I was doing the same things I do every day before getting a harsh muscle spasm in my thumb. That would take away my freedom. Eventually, I'll figure out another way of operating my wheelchair, but it'll never be the same. That portion of my life is done. Rather than let it get me down, I'm choosing to use this as a reminder to live life, and I am officially inviting you to join me. Since that day, I started living life as an active participant, beginning to go after goals and reach milestones, things I've put off for far too long. Yeah, okay, that's a lie. For the first couple of days, I ate a ridiculous amount of pizza and ice cream, because everything is made better by pizza and ice cream. Everything. After that, I started living life as an active participant, beginning to go after goals and reach milestones. I reached out to 3 of my biggest idols and asked them to be part of Able Gamers. I entered a contest to co-write a novel with James Patterson. I took a phone call with the White House. I started learning Japanese again and have continued the lessons every day for a month. I emailed 3 celebrities sharing my story and hopefully beginning my inspirational Tony Robbins wannabe career. What do all these things have in common? They were all scary, and they were all things that I have wanted to do for a long time, but I either never had the time or would do it tomorrow. And this is where you come in. I know your first reaction is going to feel sad for me and want to offer your support. While I appreciate the gesture, I have an alternate request. We all have things that we have wanted to do for a long time, but there's always an excuse, a reason something doesn't get done. Instead of posting sadness for my derelict thumb, I want you to do the following. Post 2 things you always wanted to do but never got around to starting. And promise me you're going to start now. Did you always want to learn how to be a better cook? Great. Look up and sign up for a class. Have you always wanted to write? Fantastic. Open a Word document tonight and begin. Maybe it's learning another language, emailing a celebrity you wish you could interact with, reaching out to an old friend to tell them you appreciate what they did for you, or, whatever is in your heart. The point is to start today. Remember, although life is long, time is short. You never know how many last good days you have left. And on that note, thank you for listening to Everyone Dies. Like sand through an hourglass, so was my lost shaker of salt. This is Charlie Navarrete, and from Academy Award-winning actress and writer Emma Thompson, we're just here for a bit, then we die, and we're gone.
And I'm Marianne Matzo, and we'll see you next week. Remember, any day can be our last good day, and every day is a gift.
This podcast does not provide medical advice. All discussion on this podcast, such as treatments, dosages, outcomes, charts, patient profiles, advice, messages, and any other discussion are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. Always seek the advice of your primary care practitioner or other qualified health providers with any questions that you may have regarding your health. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard from this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. Everyone Dies does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, practitioners, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned in this podcast. Reliance on any information provided in this podcast by persons appearing on this podcast at the invitation of Everyone Dies or by other members is solely at your own risk.